Week 10. So now we're going to talk when you're using this classical guitar method book, and you don't have to use your fingers for this until you start to get to the stuff that utilizes multiple notes at the same time. But you don't have to do that. But we're going to talk about how to play with your fingers. So this is something you can do with those chords. It's not exclusive to reading music or classical guitar per se, but classical guitarists use their fingers, so I try to clump this in with this part of the learning. So the first thing I always try to instill upon students before you start doing any fingerstyle stuff is do something called rasgueados. Rasgueados are a Central and South American flamenco technique from Spain, and then these techniques that use the back of your nail. So I'm just going to do it once for you, but what you do is you kind of put your fingers like this, and then you let your fingers hit the top of the strings like that. So, it's a good exercise to sort of train your hands for later on if you do more of this stuff, and it makes your fingers come back, and I find this helps students be able to play with their fingers. So what it is you just simply go like this. Okay, there's other variations on that, but you don't need to worry about it. That's the most basic version of it, and you can just play around with that. I will include some exercises if you want to explore that further. The main thing is don't bounce your hand. You're trying to strengthen your arm. It's completely normal and good actually if you're fatigued in the top of your arm. That's kind of what you're going for. And then the other thing is just playing with your fingers. So with playing with your fingers, the way I like to think about it in the beginning at least, is your thumb covers the bass string. So that's the 6th, the 5th, and the 4th string. Right? And then your fingers, we call these P-I-M-A. I should have said that first. This is in the book. Your I finger, which is your first finger, goes on the 3rd string. Your M finger goes on the 2nd string. It's your 2nd finger. And your A finger, or your 3rd finger, goes on the 1st string. So when you play, those are kind of the notes that they're responsible for, right? So the fingers are on those. It's kind of the rest position of the guitar. So the way I like to work on fingerstyle and arpeggiated chords and anything else is this wonderful group of exercises from way back in the 1800s around Beethoven's time that this guy Giuliani wrote. And I'll include these, link to these. I will include them in tablature and in music. But what they are, they're little patterns that you just simply play. Or whatever. With different permutations of your fingers. So, they have all sorts of different patterns in there. And you can play around with them on your own, but there's 120 of them. So what I recommend you do is you take a couple of them a day. You probably won't get through all 120 of them. The way the books that I like sort of group them in a specific way to where some of them are doing arpeggios, some are doing what you call block chords, and I will include that in the written material there. But this stuff, you can kind of circle back to those chords that we were doing. If you take a pattern, like let's say you do the Giuliani exercise that just goes, or whatever, if you play other chords, it'll sound cool, right? If you you can kind of plug and play one of these Giuliani exercises with a chord progression that you like. So the other thing too is you can grow nails on your right hand if you really want to get into this stuff. And I'm not going to get too crazy with the technical stuff for your hands, but try to not collapse your hand. I see that a lot in guitar students. Don't let your hand collapse like this. Try to keep it nice and, sort of just a little bit above your wrist, or maybe in parallel, it can be just a little bit above your knuckle. You're not doing this, and you're not doing this, right? You're not collapsing this way, you're not hyperextending that way. You're just keeping it sort of neutral. So practicing doing that exercise and practicing those is just a great way to get your fingers going. And you'll see too in the book, they'll sometimes have things where you have to play multiple notes together. if you can do a Giuliani exercise, anything that is in the book will feel comfortable and it'll feel ease. And again, if you can kind of preemptively do these exercises before you hop in there, it'll make everything much, much better for you. So that is the written music material. I'd like you to get that from my written notes and from the books. But that is pretty much that concludes the video portion of this. I encourage you, if you're in my class, please email me if any of this doesn't make sense. But the other stuff is pretty much just material that you want to write out, you want to practice from the book. But these preemptive steps can make your learning process much, much easier. And let me just reiterate this again. I am just one person doing this. There are so many great things out there. I'll include some materials that I like, but there's other people who might explain these things in a different way that might make more sense to you. And that's completely fine. I think these 3 broad topics of guitar will set you up so you can explore more stuff, learn more stuff. You can continue on to study with someone, or if one part of this gets you really excited, this is just the very tip of the iceberg. There's so much more in any one of those topics. You could study them for your whole life and not be done with it. So I hope that makes sense to you, and I hope you enjoy this stuff. We'll be doing ensemble playing and some solo classical guitar pieces in the class. And of course, those will all be posted along with these videos for you to enjoy for this class, or if you're just doing this for fun. So thank you very much for listening.